Okay. I'm actually so lit up due to the insanely dense coffee that I drank earlier today. I'll never drink that stuff again. I don't know what was in it. Maybe like a mixture of mule piss and dynamite. It's got my ass lit up. So I had to make this video over again. Even though I could do it off the top of my head, even though I have a couple notes in front of me regarding medium format. I hate doing videos over again, especially like when I'm 5 minutes into a video. Anyway, so start over. Recently Hasselblad uploaded, I think, 4 or 5 different videos talking about the advantages of medium format, and unfortunately, as others have noted, these were, shall we say, propaganda slash fluff pieces that were heavily weighting people to purchase an insanely overpriced Hasselblad medium format camera. Recently, too, on Petapixel, just as of yesterday, a guy had done an earlier review of a $30,000 Hasselblad, and this video is not about Hasselblad, where he actually reviewed it and said that the camera was poor and cheaply made, and I know what he's talking about. I've had my hands on them before. The cheap sort of dime store rubbery plastic buttons that should not exist on a $30,000 plus camera. Absolutely ridiculous. And here we have a $6,000 camera that is far, 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 far superior. Not only well thought out, incredibly well made. I am no spokesperson for Fujifilm. It was of the day about a year or so ago that people were looking at JPEG images on Flickr of the Fujifilm GFX of various photographers and say, well, I don't really see a huge difference. Of like, hold on just a minute here. Let me upload some full-blown TIFF files and unedited RAW for you to take a look at in ACR or Capture One or whatever it is that you use. And then people were shocked and said, oh, hold the phone, girlfriend. Now I see the difference. It is the case that of, I say, about 4 or 5 YouTube photographers that own medium format and full frame and crop sensor. None of those people, you notice everybody else is saying, oh, bigger sensor, bigger sensor. And there is a significant difference, but the people that actually own all the formats, like crop sensor, full frame, and medium format, you know, we're all, I can say that correctly, that all 4 or 5 of us, me, Zach Arias, and a few others, you know, we're happy to use crop sensor cameras. I mean, I love my crop sensor Fujifilm cameras. There is a significant difference, but I mean, as far as slapping out, printing out a 20 by 30 or doing some crop on a 24 megapixel crop sensor camera and having a beautifully wonderful image that anybody would enjoy and, you know, gladly pay for, doing commercial work, whether it be product or product photography or commercial work or corporate photography or wedding photography, anybody would be completely happy with. But there are differences, though. Those Hasselblad videos, unfortunately, were, shall we say, in short order. Several people noticed some issues with those Hasselblad fluff pieces. Specifically, they basically put a ball and chain around the neck of full frame cameras, and then they were comparing it to their Hasselblad cameras. And those were some slightly skewed results. Specifically, why medium format is better. People are thinking, well, you know, the sensor, which is a 645 sensor, is found within the Pentax Z and the Fujifilm GFX, and the Hasselblad X1D, which is a total failure and has several bugs that can't be fixed with firmware. They think, well, it's not that drastically larger than a full-frame sensor. But what they don't realize is that it's not additively bigger, it is multiplicatively better. It's the same difference when it comes to, say, breaking 1 twig as opposed to 5. Well, 5 should be 5 times as hard as breaking 1 twig. It's the old Roman symbolism of, I forget the exact name of it, where the sticks are bound together. It's not 5 times as much, it is multiplicatively more difficult. So it's not 5 times the power to break 5, it is far beyond that. It is the case with medium format sensors also. 50 megapixels, for example, and there's actually 6 reasons why medium format is better, and I'm going to list 4 of them. 50 megapixels, for example, is not 50 megapixels. I mean, I have the Nikon D850, which is generically a 50 megapixel camera, 47, close enough, but I mean, you take a look at untouched large TIFF files from for both the Nikon D850 and the Fujifilm GFX, and there's a significant difference. This is the same reason, and of course I guess I could say I'm definitely an expert on this, considering I have like $24,000 worth of tattoo work. The same reason why tattoos need detail removed, and I have done more than a few tattoos myself. When you actually design a tattoo, if you're going to make it smaller, you have to remove a significant amount of details. Any tattoo artist will tell you that. It's the same thing, difference between Nikon D850 and a GFX sensor. Both are basically 50 megapixels between the D850 and the GFX, but there's a significant difference. This is where 50 megapixels is not 50 megapixels. You're spreading out 50 megapixels on a significantly larger surface area on the medium format sensor. Even though it is a 645 sensor, people have made additive comparators between full frame and medium format simply by measuring the height by the width. But what they're missing is that it's not additively bigger, it is multiplicatively bigger, and that's something that doesn't translate into people's minds. That basically everybody gets that wrong. They think, well, it's not a huge, the enormous phase 1 sensor, and it's not 100 megapixels, which is good because it's smaller. The pixel pitch, the worse the SNR is, the signal to noise ratio, because you actually have clipping highlights which clip faster. So that's point number 1 why medium format is better. Number 2 is you have better dynamic range. You have the same field of view, but you have a wholly different real estate. You also therefore have much better tonality. 110 millimeters, for example, which is what I have here, f2, is equivalent to the 85 millimeter at f1.56, basically an f1.4. So while you have the same field of view between the 110 and the 85, you have a different real estate, and you also have a different perspective, even though the field of view remains the same. Different perspective, but the same field of view. That doesn't seem to translate into people's head correctly. Same reason why they don't translate, well, if this is 50 megapixels and the D850 is basically 50 megapixels, I can't see how there's much difference. Well, there's a significant difference. I mean, just take 2 shots with either one and then take a look at the TIFF files. I've already uploaded those like 6 months ago. Number 3, lens and photosite diffraction. Since like a f2 on this medium format, like the 110 f2 here, is equivalent to f1.4, basically an f1.56 specifically. The tininess compared to the 35 millimeter, you have a much different lens fidelity and SNR, signal to noise ratio. Black and whites, just render beautifully. Not only do you have a lot of detail, obviously too, the image doesn't have to be blown up as much. You say, well, 50 megapixels is 50. Yeah, but how much less does that medium format sensor need to be blown up to create an identical 8x10 as was made with a 35 millimeter full frame sensor? That also doesn't translate in people's heads, apparently, because I encounter that statement all the time where people are not getting that. And specifically number 4 out of the 6 reasons, there's essentially only 6, is that the increase in size, like I said, is not additively better, it is multiplicatively better. And that's something that's really important in field theory and electrical theory that also isn't understood. You have orders of magnitude which are not additive, but they're multiplicative. And that same premise is also true for sensor size as well as pixel pitch as well. Not relational to megapixels, but the actual sensor size and the pixel pitch is not additively better, it is multiplicatively better. That's not my opinion, that's a fact. So all these people are actually peeping at JPEGs, large JPEGs, to be understood, like on the Flickr page for whichever medium format lens from the GFX, for example. It's like you're not getting it. Just take a look at a large TIFF file or an untouched RAW file and open that up and capture 1 or ACR, and then you know the reason why you're paying $6,500 for the camera. But amazingly enough, over 4 or 5 different videos, Hasselblad didn't communicate that to people. I mean, they were fluff pieces to advocate for the purchase of Hasselblad, and they were talking about why medium format is superior, and of course it is. I mean, everybody knows that. It's like, well, is it $6,500 superior? And the question is, I mean, are you getting paid to do that if you're doing corporate or product or event photography, business, and you're writing it off on your taxes and you're really impressing the hell out of people? You know, obviously anybody can be impressed perfectly fine with even a crop sensor for basically everything. But there is such a thing as presentation. You know, you say, hey, you know, I'm going to do some corporate stuff with you. What are you using? This happens all the time. I mean, people know, the photographers know. It's like, hey, I can do anything to impress these people, just showing them the final shot with my crop sensor camera, or even a micro four thirds. I mean, that's just a fact. But then you deal with the reality of, say, well, what are you going to use to take the shot? I mean, presentation? You know, are you going to get the job? If you could be like the smartest person in the world and show up to a job wearing tennis shoes and shorts and chewing gum and looking like a slob, you know, it's like you'd be the smartest person for the job in the whole world, but they're still not going to hire your ass. Or you could be the dumbest idiots, and you could dress really nice, stick on a nice Rolex, and look like you know what you're talking about, and you'll get the job. It's like, why did they hire that idiot? It's like, well, he showed up with a suit and tie and a Rolex, and he had a lot of confidence, and I felt, you know, this guy's good for the job. It's like, no, he's not. He's an idiot. He's going to fail at this job. He's going to F that job up. You know, appearances mean a lot. You know, there's just no denying that business and corporate people, you know, say, hey, and some of them will tell you this. I mean, I know photographers that have told me this too. It's like, I know that. I've had it asked me, it's like, what are you going to use? I mean, I demand medium format for this shoot. I mean, they do. It's like, they're not going to let you even do the shoot unless you say, you got medium format? No. I had a photographer, a wedding photographer, and he wanted to work for a guild of wedding photographers up in New Jersey. And they, even though he's a really good wedding photographer, they would not hire him based upon the sensor size and the gear that he's using. That's true. That happens a lot. People say, you got to do this professional shoot with that dinky camera. You know, people are superficial. Obviously the job will get done if you've got the skills to use it correctly. I mean, no one's saying that no one is saying that, nor am I saying in this damn video that you're like, oh, things are going to change using medium format. You know, your shots are going to be... I never said that in this video. My point is people are superficial. You have a lot more wiggle room, and the results are stunning. I mean, especially if you don't have to crop the shot. I mean, you zoom with your feet, get where you need to go. The great thing about medium format is, since you're not using a damn medium format camera for sports, action, wildlife, and photojournalism, you're just not. For the obvious reasons that it's huge and heavy and slow. All of them are. That means that you can frame the shot exactly how you want. You're going to zoom with your feet, get the shot, drop the lighting, and you know, you might crop just a little bit. It's like, I like a tighter crop on it. But I mean, the shot is exactly how you want it to be. And you have this huge, enormous RAW file that you just have all the latitude in the world with, incredible dynamic range, the detail out the ass. This is where 50 megapixels is not 50 megapixels. This is where it is not equal to a Nikon D850, which is essentially, and I have that damn camera, not equal to 50 megapixels. Well, the sensor, and I get this, people say this all the time and they don't get it. Well, you know, the sensor is not that much larger than a full frame. Well, it's actually substantially larger, but only that, it's not additively larger. Well, yeah, it's this height by that width compared to full frame, and that's not a huge, huge difference. It's like you're not getting it. There's a multiplicative difference between the two, not additive. It's like, well, if it's only 10 millimeters bigger in square area, 10 square, you know, X number of centimeters bigger, then that means it is only 28.2%. No, it doesn't work like that. That's additive. I always have that issue too in field theory, especially when discussing magnetism. People don't get the difference between additive and multiplicative. It's the same difference that the Romans made that their symbolism, you know, of the branches or the twigs tied together acting as one entity. It's like, well, 30 should be 30 times as hard to break as 1 is. It's like, no. When you actually have them all bound together, they become multiplicatively harder. So instead of being 30 times more power to break them all, for example, in the Roman symbolism, it might be, and I don't know what the exact force figures are, but it might be like 100 times more. Even though there's only 30 times as many, it's actually like 100 or more times harder to break it as force required to snap the bundle. This is the same thing true with sensor size and also pixel pitch. It is not additive, it is multiplicative. Someone say, oh God, you keep repeating yourself. It's like, I keep repeating myself in this video on that point of multiplicatively different because nobody gets it. I keep saying it, but nobody gets it. It's the same thing with sensor size too. So, well, you know, bigger sensors gather more light. No, they don't. Sure they do. There's another YouTuber with a bazillion subscribers, and he still thinks that. He's tried to argue with me. Even as early as like a live stream a couple months ago. Is well, if it's X number of unit areas larger. It's like, if that were the case, then light meters would have an entry for sensor size, but they don't. Exposure is per unit area, not per total area. Digital sensors do not work like solar panels and picture windows, which, you know, the larger, the better, the bigger. But solar panels and picture windows are only doing one thing, collecting more electricity or passing more light through. But sensors don't work that way. Whatever happens here on a larger sensor has no impact on what happens in the per unit area. Because you're not gathering one thing, which is 1 unit of white light to the sensor. You're gathering endless millions of points of different colored light. This is why larger sensors don't gather more light. Sure they do. No, they don't, because if they did, then the hardcore professional light meters would have an input for sensor size, and they don't. And I have the best light meters that money can buy. I've owned I've actually owned a lot of different light meters over 24 plus years. None of them have an input for sensor size. You know, you meter the same way with large format as you do with medium format, as you do with full frame, as you do with crop sensor, as you do with micro four thirds. It's per unit area. It's like people say, why do you repeat yourselves? Like, I repeat myself because nobody gets it. Well, some people get it, but not too many do. Thank you so much for watching. Fuji. Bye.